Welcome to the exam review of the 2021 National Senior Certificate Mathematics Paper 1 exam. In this video, I'll give a brief overview of each of the questions in this paper. This video might be stressful for some people, especially if you are writing this paper. If you are one of those people, then it might be wise to avoid watching this video. I will not give detailed solution since this is an exam review, and please make sure you subscribe to be notified of future exam revision session and math Q&A session. All right, so this paper kicks off with a stat question. And I think this was a straightforward question. So they say a bakery kept a record of the number of loaves of bread a tuck shop ordered daily over the last 18 days. The information is shown below. Okay, so nothing hectic there. So the first part of the question asks to calculate the mean number of loaves of bread ordered daily. So you're going to be using your calculator to do that. So either you use your calculator or you use the formula given in your information sheet. And there you are going to get a mean of 22. Okay. And the second part of the question asks us to calculate the standard deviation of the data. Again, either you use your calculator or you use your formula given in the information sheet. But given that this is 1 mark, I'd advise you to use your calculator. So the standard deviation there, you would have found that it is 10.170. And the third part of the question asks us, says, calculate the number of days on which the number of loaves of bread ordered was more than 1 standard deviation above the mean. Now, you'll remember that within 1 standard deviation, we have x minus the standard deviation. So within 1 standard deviation, we have the interval x minus the standard deviation and x plus the standard deviation. So here we are asking the number of days that were more than 1 standard deviation. So we want all the days that were greater than x bar plus the standard deviation. So this is x bar, sorry. So this is the mean minus the standard deviation, mean plus the standard deviation. So we want all the days that will be greater than x bar plus the standard deviation. So substituting your x bar and your standard deviation, you're going to get 32.170. So you'll be looking for all the values that are greater than 32.170. And if you look at your data, you will see that this value is greater than this value here, this value, this value, this value, and this value. So your answer here will be 5 days. Okay. So let's move on to the second part of the question. So the second part of the question says, the tuck shop owner was not able to sell all the loaves of bread delivered daily. He calculated the mean number of loaves sold over the 18 days to be 20. Calculate, so you have to read the question carefully. You have to calculate the number of loaves of bread that were so you have to calculate the number of loaves of bread which were not sold. Okay, so I suspect maybe this question tricked many people, but what they are essentially asking you here, they are giving you the mean number of loaves that were sold, and they are asking you how many were not sold. Okay, so in total, how many breads have you got? So in total, how many breads have you got? So that is easy. Sorry, I went there up. So in total, how many breads have you got? You're going to sum all these values here, and there you're going to get 396, but you have the mean for those that were only sold. So you're going to subtract from this. In total, you're going to subtract those that were not sold. You've still got 18 days, and this mean must be 20. So this is the mean for the loaves of bread that were sold. Okay, so this x is those that were not sold. Okay, so this is a simple linear equation. There you're going to get your x to be 36. All right. So if you look at the last part of the question, they give you two box and whisker plots, and they ask you which one represent the data given above. Well, if you calculate the median, for example, if you calculate the median or determine the median using the above data given, you'll find that your median is 18.5. And you can see for this one, the median is about 30. And for this one, the median is about 18.5. So clearly, the data above is represented by this box and whisker plot. Okay, that was very simple. And the last part of this question asks us to describe the skewness of the data. So you can see from the box and whisker we have got that our data is positively skewed. So that was very straightforward. So a very straightforward 10 marks there. Nothing was really hectic. Okay, so let's move on to our second question. The second question is based on regression. So you are given the x values and you are given the y values, and you are asked to plot to draw a scatter plot representing this data. We are given x and we are given y. So this is straightforward. It's a matter of plotting your point. So if you plot your points, you're going to get something that looks like this. So only thing you're doing, you're plotting x against y. So you're plotting points. We have been plotting points since grade 8. So that was a very straightforward question. And the second part of the question asks us to determine the equation of the least square regression line. So there you're going to be using your calculator there. Okay, because this is an exam review, I'm not going to go into detail. So if you use your calculator, you would have found that the regression line is y is equal to minus 1.77 x plus 90.478. Okay, question 2.3 says if the farmer sells 5-liter containers of milk for 38 rand, then predict the number of 5-liter containers of milk he will sell. So this is a straightforward substitution. So you're going to have to take your 38 and substitute it into your x, because remember, x is your price and you are given the price here, and they want the number of 5-liter containers of milk, which is your y. So if we substitute 38 instead of x in that regression equation, you are going to get your y to be 21. Okay, so the last part of the question says refer to the correlation between the price of 5-liter containers of milk and the number of 5-liter containers of milk sold, and comment on the accuracy of your answer to question 2.3. So if you look at your scatter plot, you will see that there is a negative correlation there. So it is clear that as the price increases, then the number of containers sold decreases. So as you can see here, commenting using this answer here, you can see the price went even further from 30 to 38, and the number of containers sold decreased further to 21. So there's a negative correlation there, it's clear. So as the price increases, the number of containers sold decreases. Okay, so let's move on to our third question. You are given this information here, which you have to read because I'm doing the exam with you and I don't want to waste time. You can read that at your own time, and you are given this picture here. So the first question they ask us here is to determine the gradient of BE. So if you look at BE, BE is this line here. While you don't have the coordinate of B, but you have the coordinate of C and E, and they lie on the same line. So you can use C and E to determine the gradient. So you're going to have the change in Y over the change in X, and the gradient of BE will be equal to 1 over 4. And they ask us to calculate the gradient of AB. Now, if you look at AB, you don't have the end point, but you have the inclination. So if you have the inclination, you can always use tan theta is equal to the gradient of BA. Okay, which means if you substitute the inclination, the angle of inclination you're given, the gradient of BA will be equal to 7, rounding off. Right. So let's fill in the information we have got. So at the moment, we have got the gradient of BE to be 1 over 4, the gradient of AB to be 7. Okay, so let's move on and see what the next question is asking us. The next question is asking us to determine the equation of BE. Okay, so they're asking us to determine the equation of BE. Well, already you've got the gradient of BE to be 1 over 4. You only need one other point to determine the value of C. You can choose point C or point E, it doesn't matter. And there you are going to get your equation to be 1 over 4x minus 3. Okay. Now it starts getting a little bit tricky. Now they are saying calculate the coordinate of B. Now please don't freak out here. If you look at B, you will see that B lies in this line BH. Okay, or in this line BE, or you can say BE. And we know the equation of this line is 1 over 4 minus 3. So if B lies in this line BE, then B must satisfy this equation. So what does that mean? That means if it's satisfying that equation, that means K is equal to 1 over 4 K minus 3. And you have to solve for K there. You'll find that K is equal to minus 4. So you can see here, the X coordinate is K and the Y coordinate is K, so it's the same thing. So the coordinate of B is minus 4 minus 4. And now they ask us to determine the size of A. Okay, so let's quickly scroll up and have a look at A. Now, if you look at A, you will see that A is at the top there. Now, the focus here, you have to focus on this triangle here. Okay, you have to focus on this triangle here. If you could determine this angle here, which is the inclination, then you can use the fact that the exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of the two opposite interior angles. Okay, you can calculate the gradient of AC. Okay, the gradient of AC will be minus 2, and use inclination. Now, because the gradient is negative, when you use the tan theta is equal to m, the angle you're going to get is this angle. So you still have to say 180 minus this angle. And now be careful here, the angle that you're going to get is this angle here. So the angle that you're going to get is this angle here. But remember, we want to use the exterior angle here. So you're going to find out that this angle is 63.43. Then that means this angle here is 180 minus 63.43. So using the fact that the exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of the two opposite interior angles, then it is clear that A plus 81.87 is equal to 180 minus 63. So if you solve for A here, you'll find that A is 34.7 degrees. All right, so let's move on to the next question. So the next question says, calculate the point of intersection of the diagonals of a parallelogram ACES, where S is a point in the first quadrant. So you have to imagine this. We have a point somewhere here. I'm going to call it XY, and we are forming a parallelogram. So the parallelogram that we are focusing on is ACES. And the examiners are looking for the diagonals, where the diagonals intersect. Well, you remember that they intersect at the midpoint. So if you can calculate the midpoint of AE, then you will answer the question. So using the midpoint formula, you will find that the midpoint they are looking for, or the point of intersection they are looking for, is 5, 5. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so this is 5, 5. Now the next question says another point T, which is PP, where P is greater than 0, is plotted such that ET is equal to BE, and that is equal to 4 root 17. And they ask you to calculate the coordinate of T. So since they gave you a distance here, then we're going to have to use the distance formula. Now, you have to be a little bit careful here at what you are using, because you can see here we have ET and we have BE, and that is equal to 4 root 17. So we have the coordinate of E, right? So you're going to write them down. You're going to tell your examiner that E is 12, 0, and T is PP. You know that the distance between these 2 points is 4 root 17. So if I take this as my first point and this as my second point, and I use the distance formula, then I can see that P minus 0 squared plus P minus 12 squared is equal to the distance squared. So if you square this, you're going to get 272. So now you have the equation. So it looks like it's going to be a quadratic equation. So you're going to expand this, you're going to expand this, bring this to the other side of the equation, and you're going to land up with P squared minus 12P minus 64 is equal to 0. So if you factorize this, you're going to get P is equal to 16, or P is equal to minus 4. Now, since they told me that P is greater than 0, then I have to choose this. So that means the coordinate of T is 16, 16. Okay. Then our last part of the question says, determine the equation of the circle centered at E and passing through B and T in this form. So we already know that the center is E, so we can quickly write x minus 12 squared plus y minus 0, which is just y, all squared is equal to r squared. How do we find r? We know that this passes through B and T. So you can substitute any point, B or T, as long as the circle passes through that point. You can substitute it, then you will find your r squared. Okay, now if you do the substitution, you will find that your r squared is 272. So the equation that the examiner is looking for is, so the answer for this, so the equation the examiners are looking for is x minus 12 all squared plus y all squared is equal to 272. Okay, and the last part says determine the equation of the tangent, okay, so I wanted to underline that, of the tangent to the circle at B. Okay, so what is actually happening here, let me go to the picture. So remember, we have got a circle that is passing through B and that is passing through T, which is somewhere here. So let me erase this. So T is somewhere here. So we have got the circle. So if you can imagine this, this is what we have got here. And BE and ET are the radius. So what we actually want, we want the equation of the tangent passing through B. Now, what you have to remember here, maybe let me use a different color so that you won't get confused. Now, what you have to remember here is that your tangent is always perpendicular to the radius or the diameter. So, since the gradient of BE I've calculated is 1/4, then the gradient of the tangent must be -4. So at this moment in time, we've got the equation y is equal to -4x plus c. So you have to find c. Now this tangent will pass through B, and you determined that B, the coordinate of B is -4. So if I say -4 is equal to -4 times -4 plus c, you will find that c is -20. So the equation of the tangent they are looking for is y is equal to -4x minus 20. Not a very difficult question, but it requires a lot of imagination, which I suspect most students struggle with. So that is your 24 marks in the bag. Now on to question 4, and question 4 is testing circles, analytical geometry, but it's testing circles. So this is an exam review. You will have to read this before you answer the question. Now the first question here asks us to write down the length of the radius. Now be very careful when the examiner says write down. When the examiner says write down, it means the answer is in front of you. And in this case, the answer was indeed in front of you. So remember, the radius is a line drawn from the circumference of the circle to the center. So if I start from the circumference here, going to the center, that will be my radius. Now you can see that the x-coordinate here is -1 and the x-coordinate here is -1. So the x-coordinate is not changing. So if it's not changing, this means this is a vertical line. And in order to find the distance of this vertical line, you will have to take the y-coordinate of n, subtract the y-coordinate of a. And there you're going to get the radius of 4 units. Okay, so that wasn't very bad. So the second part of the question asks us to calculate the coordinate of C. Now remember, they told me that CD is a tangent. So if CD is a tangent, and if I had to draw another radius here, then this tangent will be perpendicular to the radius. So this means that the x-coordinate of C will still be -1. Now, how to find the y-coordinate? Now, it's quite easy. You have the equation of this circle, right? The equation of this circle is x plus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared is equal to 4 squared. Now already I've got the x-coordinate to be -1, so I'm going to have -1 plus 1, which is 0. I need to find the corresponding y value. So there you're going to have a quadratic equation. Now don't expand it because you're going to create a lot of work for yourself. Just square root on both sides and take the appropriate answer. So you're going to find there that y is equal to 7. Okay, if you solve this equation, which is quite easy. Now the next question they're asking you is the coordinate of D. Now, the coordinate of D. Now, if you look at D, D is horizontal. So CD is horizontal, right? Now, the x coordinate, now don't worry about that at the moment, but the y coordinate, since this is a horizontal line, the y coordinate will be the same as C. So the y coordinate will still be 7. But remember, so I've got the y coordinate to be 7. What about the x coordinate? Now remember, the examiners told me that CD is 6 units. Okay, so they're giving me the horizontal distance there. That means if I take the x coordinate of D and subtract the x coordinate of C, which is -1, I'll get a distance of 6. And there you're going to get your xd to be 5. So if you solve for xd, you're going to get it to be 5. So the x coordinate there is 5. Okay. Requires a little bit of thought, but you are not supposed to freak out. Now the next question asks us to calculate the area of BCD. Okay, so they're asking us the area of BCD. Now remember, at the beginning of the question they told us that CDEB is a parallelogram. And you can see that BCD is just half of that parallelogram. So if I can find the area of the parallelogram and have it, then I'll find the area of this triangle here. Well, what is the area of the parallelogram? Now, remember, the area of parallelogram is base times height, but not any height, the perpendicular height. Okay, so I'll start off with the area of the parallelogram. It is base times height. Now the base here is 6, okay, because if this is a parallelogram, if this is 6, then this side, then BE is also 6, okay. Now, so I'm going to have 6 multiplied by, now what is the perpendicular height? Okay, now that is where you have to be a little bit careful. Okay, so what am I going to do there? Now, you have to remember that I have the coordinate of C to be -1, 7. Okay, so the perpendicular height will look like something like this. Okay, so now at this point here, I know that Now at this point here, I know that y is -1, right? I know that y is -1, and using the coordinate of B, because this is a horizontal line, it means the y value is constant through this line. So I'll have the y value of 2. So if I ask you what is the length of this vertical line, you will say 7 minus 2, which is 5 units. So the area of the parallelogram is 6 times 5, but since I'm looking for the area of, which is the area of that triangle, which is just half of the parallelogram, I'll have to half this. And there I'm going to get my area to be 15 unit squared. Okay. Now, the last part of this question is a little bit tricky. They say the circle centered at N is reflected about the line y is equal to x. Now remember, every time we're reflecting about the line y is equal to x, we interchange x and y. So whatever was x is going to become y, whatever was y is going to become x. Now they say M is the center of the circle which is formed. The two circles intersect at A and F. Okay, now if M is the center of the new circle after reflecting it about the line y is equal to x, then that means M will now have the coordinate. Now remember, I'm flipping x and y, which means the new center will be 3 minus 1. Okay, so the new circle will have the center here. Now, I already know that this point here is -1. So the new circle will have the x coordinate of, sorry, I'm sorry there. I already know that the y coordinate of -1 is here. So this new circle will lie somewhere here, where the x coordinate is 3 and the y coordinate is -1. So I'll try and be an artist here. Okay, let me quickly erase this. Now, you are usually not required to draw, but the drawing was important here because this question was a little bit tricky. So now remember, the examiner told you that these 2 points will intersect at A and F. So I'm going to assume F is somewhere here. Okay, then I'm going to draw my circle. Okay, I'm not an artist there, but I tried. Okay, now, so this is the new circle M that is reflected across the line y is equal to x. Okay, now, if you look at the question says calculate the length of NM. Now, this will be straightforward if we've got the coordinates. So this is N and this is M, and you will just use your distance formula there, which I think is straightforward for most people. So if you use the distance formula, you will find that the length is 4√2. Now, this is a very tricky question. They are asking you to find the midpoint of AF. Okay. Now, we don't know anything about AF at this moment in time. Sorry, we don't know anything about F at this moment in time, but the examiner is asking us to calculate the midpoint of AF. Now, this question was a little bit tricky. Now, I'm going to find the coordinate of f, but there's another way to do this. But I think finding the coordinate of f, I think we can all agree that it is much easier. Now, if you look here, you know that the radius from N to A is 5 units. Now, this is a horizontal line. Okay, this is the horizontal line, and this is 90 degrees. This has to be 90 degrees. This has to be 90 degrees because the y coordinate is the same. And this is also 5 units. Okay. Now, remember, this is sorry. This is sorry. It's not 5 units. It's 4 units. The radius was 4 units. And the radius of the same circle, the circle reflected across the line y is equal to x will be 4 units. And remember, from N, now this diagram is not drawn to scale, but I hope you see where I'm going here. Now from N to F, that is from the center to the circumference. So this must be 4 units. Sorry, I don't know where I'm taking the 5 units. It's supposed to be 4 units. Okay, so already you can see what is happening here. This is 90. Now I won't explain much yet because this is an exam review, but essentially what you have here is a square. So essentially this is not drawn to, maybe this is supposed to be here. Now remember, this is from the circumference to the center. This will also be 4 units. So essentially what you have here is a square. And if you're using the properties of a square, you'll find that the coordinate of f is 3, 3. Now you can find the midpoint using the midpoint formula. The midpoint will be 1, 1. Okay. That F33 is a little bit tricky to understand. Because this is an exam review, I'm not explaining everything into details, but if you have more questions, feel free to contact me. And on to our next question. Now, the next question is on trigonometry, and this question 5 is a straightforward question. Now, they're saying, without using a calculator, simplify the following expression to 1 trig ratio. Now, the first thing you're going to do here is you're going to reduce this to sine 40. This is 50 already. This is equivalent to sine x, and this is equivalent to negative 10x. Okay, so sorry, this sine of 140 is equivalent to 180 minus 40, and this sine of 360 minus x is equivalent to minus sine x. Sorry, I left the minus there because in the fourth quadrant, sine is negative. Just leave this. This will be minus 10x because the negative angle is telling you that you are in quadrant 4. Now look here, 40 and 50 add up to 90. You can simplify, those are co-ratios. They will cancel, and this negative will cancel with this negative, and you'll be left with sine x divided by 10x. If you write 10x as sine x over cos x, now because you're dividing, you're going to have to multiply. So the last step you're going to have here is sine x multiplied by cos x over sine x. These will divide, and I'm going to be left with cos x. So this is the single ratio they are looking for. 5.2 asks us to prove an identity. Now, the first thing you're going to do here is to substitute, instead of sine squared x, substitute 1 minus cos squared x. Okay, so you're going to have minus 2 into 1 minus cos squared x plus cos x plus 1. If you simplify that, you are going to have 2 cos squared x plus cos x minus 1. And if you look at the bottom, now some people may be thrown by this 540 minus x. But if you write this as cos of 180 plus 360 minus x, do you agree with me that it's still the same thing? So 180 plus 360 is still 540 minus x. But by introducing 180, you are able to use your reduction formula, because 180 plus is in the third quadrant, and in the third quadrant cos is negative, but you've still got to multiply it by this negative, so it will be plus cos of 360 minus x. Now 360 minus x is in the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, cos is positive, so you'll end up with 1 plus cos x at the bottom. Now, if you factorize the top, because this very much looks like a quadratic, a trinomial, you're going to have cos x plus 1 times 2 cos x minus 1. And at the bottom, you have 1 plus cos x. These will cancel, and you're going to land up with what you want, which is 2 cos x. And the third part of the question says, given sine of 36 is the square root of 1 minus p squared. Remember, when you are given this kind of question, the first thing you do is to draw your triangle. You are given sine, that means you have the opposite of 1 minus p squared. That means the hypotenuse was 1. If you use Pythagoras, then you'll find that this is equal to p. Okay, now it is good habit to always, when you do this kind of question, to quickly find the third angle, because they might try to use it, and if you don't have it in front of you, it is very confusing. So the third angle here is 54. So 54 is using angles in a triangle. So the first question, they say, in terms of P, determine tan 36. So the angle I'm focusing on is 36. Remember, tan is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite here is the square root of 1 minus P squared, and adjacent to 36 is P. So the answer is square root of 1 minus P squared over P. And now they try to be a little bit nasty. They're asking us to determine the cos of 108 degrees. Now, if you don't have this angle here, that's why it is good habit to always put in the third angle if you're dealing with this kind of questions, because if you don't have this angle here, you will be in trouble here, because what you have to recognize now is that 108 is double of 54. So you can say cos of 108 degrees is cos of 2 times 54. And here you can use, so the angle of focus now is 54. You can use, now this is a cos double angle. You can use any of your formulas. I'm going to use the sine one because remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and opposite is P, and hypotenuse is 1. So I'll just have P, so it will be neat and simple. So I'm going to have 1 minus 2 sine squared 54. That will be 1 minus 2. Then sine, remember, is opposite. Opposite to 54 is P over hypotenuse, which is 1, so which is just P. So I'm going to have P squared there. Remember, you have to square your sine. Okay, so that maybe this was a little bit tricky, but some of the questions were fine. And let's move on to question 6. Now, question 6 is a very tricky question. Okay, I think it was quite a tricky question. So in this particular question, you are given that cos alpha minus beta is this. And they ask you to derive the formula for cos alpha plus beta. Now you're going to say, all right, I want to use this. The cos of alpha plus beta is equivalent to cos of 360 minus alpha plus beta. These two things are equivalent, okay? Because if you use a reduction formula, 360 minus is in the fourth quadrant, and in the fourth quadrant cos is positive, so this will just go back to cos of alpha plus beta. So you can also write this as cos of 360 minus alpha, okay, minus beta. And what you're going to do here, in order to use the formula given, you're going to treat this as one angle, and you're going to treat this as one angle. Now you can use the cos alpha minus beta, because in this particular case, alpha will be 360 minus alpha, and your beta will be beta in this particular case, so it will be equivalent. So, and you'll be using your reduction formula 360 to reduce 360 minus alpha. So there, if you do what I'm saying, you're going to get your normal formula, you know, which is cos alpha times cos beta minus sine alpha sine beta. Now 6.1.2 was a very tricky question, because they are saying simplify, but they are not telling you the final answer here. Well, I hope you understood that since I've just proved the compound formula, then because if a question is difficult, the examiners will always lead you. Okay, so maybe here, maybe I'm gonna have to use the compound formula I've just derived, or the one given at the beginning. So if you look at this, we have 2 cos 6x cos 4x. Now, because I have 6x and 4x, it will be wise to write this cos 10x as 6x plus 4x, so that I can have the same angles and be able to simplify. Okay. 2 sine x. All right, so what have I got now? I've got 2 cos 6x cos 4x minus, now this cos into 6x plus 4x is your compound formula. Okay, you can use your compound formula there. So you're going to have 2 cos 6x cos 4x. Make sure you put the bracket so you don't mess it up. Cos 6x cos 4x plus, no, in this particular case, I'm going to have a minus using the formula, minus sine 6x sine 4x, right? Plus 2 sine squared x. Now, if you distribute the bracket here, you can see that you're going to have 2 cos x cos 4x minus cos 6x, sorry. So you're going to have 2 cos 6x cos 4x minus cos 6x 4x. So those are like your like terms. So that is the same as saying 2x minus x. Okay, they're like terms. So it will come down to cos 6x cos 4x. Okay, but if I multiply the negative, I've still got sine 6x sine 4x plus 2 sine squared x. So this is another expanded compound angle. So that can be written as cos 6x minus 4x. Okay, so this can be written as cos 6x minus 4x, which is cos 2x plus 2 sine x. Because I've got a sine, I'm going to write this as 1 minus 2 sine squared x plus 2 sine squared x is equal to 1. Okay, this is equal to 1. So that was a little bit of a tricky question. And the last part of this question asks us to determine the general solution of tan x is equal to 2 sine x. Now, please read your instruction. The examiners are saying where cos x is less than 0. We'll quickly see where that will become handy. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is to write your tan as sine x over cos x and write your sine double angle. So what you're going to have there, you're going to have sine x over cos x is equal to 4 sine x cos x. Now 4 because 2 times 2, because you say 2 and you still got to multiply by 2 of the double angle, so it's going to be 4. Now, the next sensible thing to do here is to cross multiply. Okay, let me do that. Sine x is equal to 4 sine x cos squared x. Now, please don't divide by sine x. Okay, that is wrong because sine x might be equal to 0. And in fact, you will see in this particular case, sine x is in fact equal to 0. So what you're actually doing when you're dividing, so when you divide by sine x, that is wrong. Okay, please don't do it. It is wrong. What you are doing, you are creating an error of, you might be creating an error where you are dividing by 0. So please, it is mathematically incorrect. Don't divide by sine. Okay, now some people will say, but so sometimes I divide by cos and I will have a 10. Okay, that is correct because you do not lose the cos because cos will be contained in 10. So that will be correct. But you will see here, if you divide by sine, you lose the sign. So please do not divide by it. So the sensible thing to do here is to put everything over one side. So I'm going to have 4 sine x cos squared x minus sine x is equal to 0. Now you take a common factor and you're going to be left with 4 cos squared x minus 1. So you can see here that your sine x is equal to 0 or cos squared x is equal to 1 over 4. Okay, so now you have to find the general solution. So I won't dwell too much on that because this is an exam review. You can find the general solution. So at the moment, I've got sine x is equal to 0 or cos squared x is equal to 1 over 4. Okay, so I can see that x will be k 360 or x will be 180 plus k 360. Okay, now be very careful here. You're going to have cos x is equal to plus or minus a half, but cos is less than 0, so you're going to take the negative and find your reference angle and find the general solution. So x there will be plus or minus 120 plus k 360. Do not forget that k is an element of integers. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So this question here was a little bit tricky. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. And this question is testing graphs. So you are here, you are given this, the graph of minus 2 sine x is drawn in this interval. And they ask you to draw in the same set of x's the graph of cos x minus 60. Well, this is just the graph of cos x shifted 60 units to the right. So that should be straightforward. So I've already drawn it because I didn't want to waste time. So this is your graph. So this is the original graph. You were given the graph of f, and this is my g. Okay, so this is just shifting cos x 60 unit to the right. You can see the point. So you have the maximum here, you have the minimum here, and you have the end points here. Okay, so that wasn't very bad. That wasn't a train smash. What the next question is asking us, the next question is asking us to write down the period of f of 3x. So this means wherever you see an x in the graph of f, go and substitute 3x. So what I'm going to have there, I'm going to have the new graph minus 2 sine 3x. And remember, for the period, we just take the normal period and divide by 3. So there you're going to have 360 divided by 3. And there you're going to have 120. Now 7.3 confused many, but it was not supposed to be a confusing question because they say use the graphs to determine the value of x in the interval for which the graph of f minus the graph of g is equal to 1. So what does this mean? This means the y-coordinate of f minus the y-coordinate of g must be equal to 1. Well, let's go back to our graph and see. Now, for that, remember, I'm subtracting f, right? I'm subtracting g from f, which means f must be above. So, looking at the part where f is above is only this part here. And you can see that where f is equal to 1 is at this point here and at this point here, right? But at this point here, g will definitely not be equal to 0, such that 1 minus 0 is equal to 1. Okay, but here you can see at this point here, g is equal to 0. So if I say 1 minus 0, I'm going to get 1, which is what the examiner is looking for. So you can see that happens when x is equal to minus 30. All right, so you're going to give your answer here, x is equal to minus 30 degrees. Now the last part of the question asks us to write the range of k. Now k is the graph of g, but with an amplitude of half, and this graph is shifted 1 unit up. So let us first focus on this. What will be the range of this graph here? Okay, if you agree with me, it will be y is an element from minus half to half, so just the amplitude. But when you take this graph and shift it 1 unit up, okay, So we had the maximum at half. Now, if you add 1 to that maximum, you're going to get 3/2. And the minimum was minus half. Now, if you add 1 to that half, you're going to get half. Okay, so the range you are looking for, sorry, this is an exam review, so I'm not explaining everything into detail. So the answer you are looking for is y is an element of half 3/2. So your range is in this interval, or you can say y is between half and 3/2. Okay, so that wasn't very bad. So let's move on to the next question. And the next question here is testing 3D trigonometry. Okay, now I won't read much here because this is an exam review. So let's jump on to the first question here. So the first question asks us to prove that Qx is 5 tan x. So if you look at Qs, it is here. Now it's clear here that I can use the sine rule, okay? Because I've got the angle opposite to this side, and I've got a pair which have got an angle and the side opposite to it. So I can say that Qs over sine x is equal to 5 over sine of 90 plus x. Okay, now this 90 plus x will go down to cos x if you use your co-ratios. So if you cross multiply, you are then going to have Qs is equal to 5 sine x over cos x, which is 10x. So I've just determined that this is equal to 5 10x. Now since these are equal, then these will also be 5 10x. Okay, now the next question asks us to prove that the length of QT, now if you look at QT, this is your QT. Asks us to prove that the length of QT is 10 sine x. Now, there are different ways to do this particular question here. Now, please note, since these are equal, then you have an isosceles triangle. So if this is x, this will also be equal to x. Just fill in everything. So that means this will be 180 minus 2x. Now, if I look at this triangle here, what jumps into mind is the cos rule. But if you use the cos rule to prove this question, then you have messy algebra. I don't think you will get the answer and you give up later. Okay, but I can still use the sine rule here because I've got the side opposite to this side is this angle, and I've got this side here, and opposite to this side is this angle. So I can use the sine rule here. But if you use the cos rule, you're gonna run into some trouble. It is applicable here, but if you use it, your algebra will just be messy. So I'm going to use the sine rule. So I'm going to have QT over the sine of 180 minus 2x is equal to 5 10x over sine x. Now it's a matter of doing the algebra because QT is 5 10, right? Is 5 10x. Now this will reduce to a sine double angle. So I'm going to have sine 2x over sine x. Now, what am I going to have? I'm going to have 5 sine x over cos x times 2 sine x cos x over sine x, and I'm cancelling there. 5 times 2 is 10, and I'm left with sine x, which is what you are required to prove. You can see the answer comes out quickly, but if you use the cos rule, trust me, you will give up. Okay, so that required a little bit of thought. And the last question, they're asking us to find the area of TQR. Okay, so they're asking us to find the area of TQR, and they gave us the angle Q. Okay, maybe a different color is required here, and they gave us the angle Q. So you have got that this is 10 sine x, this is 5. Now you have to use the area rule. So you're going to have half 5 times 10 sine 25. We are given x times the sine of the included angle. We are given this angle to be 70, and you punch this in your calculator. Sorry, I don't have a calculator in front of me. So that question wasn't very bad, but I suspect most people here confused themselves with the cos rule and they ran into trouble. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. And question 9 is on Euclidean geometry. Okay, now remember, you have to read the information given before you answer the question. Okay, so the first question they ask us here, reason. So let me go back to my red pen, is to give a reason why ST is equal to TR. While there, it's just bookwork. You simply have to remember one of your theorems, that tangents from the common points are equal. So that's why these two will be equal. Now, immediately, these two are equal. That means we've got an isosceles triangle. That means the base angles will be equal. So this angle will be equal to this angle. Okay, so the next part of the question, they're asking us to calculate S2. Now, this is an exam review. I will spell out the reasons, I will articulate them, but in an exam, you have to write each and every reason. Okay, now S2 will be equal to 51 degrees. Okay, the reason why it's 51 degrees is because we have 78 here, and these two must be equal, and angles in a triangle must add up to 180. So 2x plus 78 is equal to 180. So you will see that S2 is equal to 51. All right, so this is equal to 51. Okay, the reason angle opposite to equal sides. Okay, if you didn't want to show this algebra. So make sure you're giving a reason. I'm simply articulating here, but in an exam, we have to give a reason. Okay. The next one they ask us is S3. All right. Now, where is S3? Now, S3 lies here. Okay. So S3 lies here. Now, you will have to look at this figure, and you will see that what we've actually got here is a cyclic quad. Okay, this is a cyclic quad because all angles lie, sorry, all points, all 4 points lie in the circumference of the circle. Okay, so we've got a cyclic quad, and we are given that this angle is 93. Remember, the exterior angle of a cyclic quad is equal to the interior opposite angles. So this means that this whole angle here is 93. Okay, so if this whole angle here is 93, that means S2 plus S3 is equal to 93, and you're going to give a reason exterior angle of a cyclic quad is equal to the opposite interior angle. And S2, I've got S2, I'm looking for, remember S2 is 51, I'm looking for S3. So your S3 will be 42 if you solve this equation here. So that was a very straightforward 5 marks there. Now we come to the last 2 final questions, which I think were the most difficult questions here. Okay, I think they were the most trickiest question, and I suspect most students struggle with these last two questions. So now you're going to read this. I'm doing an exam review, so I'm not going into details. Now, in question 10, the first question they're asking us is to give a reason why AF is equal to FE. Okay, so they're asking us to explain why this is equal to this. Well, if you look at this line here, you can see that this is the line drawn from the center of the circle, and it is also perpendicular to this chord. So in that particular case, if you use theorem 1 of your Euclidean geometry, you will know that that line will bisect the chord. So if it's drawn from the center and it's perpendicular to the chord, it will definitely bisect the chord. So that's why these will be equal. So if it bisects the chord, these will be equal. Now, they say determine giving reason the size of M1 in terms of X. Now, what they're actually testing here, they are testing angle at the center twice angle at the circumference. But you will notice that it's the other way around to what is in your note. So this is the angle at the center, right? But this is not the angle at the circumference you'll be using. No. Remember, it must be subtended by the same arc. Okay. Now I'm going into details, and I don't want to go into details. Remember, it must be subtended by the same arc. Okay. And this arc here subtends to this point here, and this is your center. So basically the angle at the center is twice the angle at the circumference. There is your theorem there. But what is A1? Well, A1 is easy to find. If this is X and this is 90, then you can use angles in a triangle to say this is 90 minus X. Now, angle at the center is twice the angle at the circumference. That means that this is 180 minus 2x. All right. So remember, I'm articulating this in an exam. You'll have to write it down. So you're going to tell your examiner that M1 is 180 minus 2x. The next question they're asking us here is to prove giving reasons that AD is a tangent to the circle passing through A, C, and F. So what have we got here? Let me use a different color because I don't want to confuse people. So we want to prove that AD is a tangent to the circle passing through A, F, and C. Okay. Now, what I have to prove here, usually you either prove, you have to prove one of the properties. Okay, now I won't go into details here because this is an exam review, but if you look at what you are given here, if I can prove that A2 is equal to C, which is X, then I'll have the 10 chord theorem, and then I would have proved that AD is a tangent. Now, if you look at this, you are given that CD is a diameter and the angle opposite to the diameter is 90 degrees. So this whole angle here is 90 degrees. But already I have that this little portion is 90 minus x. So in order for the whole thing to be 90, I must have this to be equal to x. Now you can see here that this angle is equal to this angle. So I've got now the angle between the chord and the tangent equal to the angle in the opposite alternative segment. So then AD is a tangent. All right. But I suspect most people were confused there. Now the last part of the question is even more tricky because what they're saying CF is 6 units. So they're giving you the length of CF. They're telling you that CF is 6 units. And they're telling you that AB is 24. Okay. And they ask you to calculate giving reasons. Remember, I'm not writing the whole thing down because this is an exam review. I'm simply going to articulate my reasons. So they say calculate giving reason the length of AE. Now, this question was very, very tricky because it requires you, so they want the length of AE. Let me erase this so that you can see. So they want the length of AE. Now, this question was extremely demanding because it requires you to remember something called the midpoint theorem. Okay, it requires you to recall something called the midpoint theorem, and you studied the midpoint theorem in grade 10. So I suspect most people were confused here. They didn't know what to do, and very few people would have remembered the midpoint theorem since it's something you studied in grade 10. Now remember, the midpoint theorem says the line joining the midpoints of two sides of a triangle is parallel to the third side of a triangle and equal to half of the length of the third side. Okay, now the reason why I'm using the midpoint theorem here is because this side here is equal to this side here, and this is the center, so this is equal to this. Okay, so remember the midpoint, the line joining the midpoint of two sides, joining the midpoint of two sides of a triangle is parallel to the third side of a triangle and is equal to what? Is equal to half of the length of the third side. So if this is 24, then this means that Fm is equal to 12, which is half of 24. So what I've actually got now is the radius, because if you look very carefully, let me use a different color. From the circumference to the center is the radius. So that radius is 12 plus 6, which is 18. Now, from the circumference to the center is the radius, and you know radius are equal. So that means that this is actually equal to 18. Okay, so now you have got 12, you have got 18. This is a right angle triangle. Well, you can find FE using Pythagoras. So 18 squared is equal to 12 squared plus FE squared. Okay, let me erase this. So you're going to find your FE squared to be 180. So your FE will be 6 root 5. Okay, using Pythagoras. But the examiners are looking for AE, and these are equal. So AE will simply be double of 6 root 5, which is 12 root 5. But I suspect here most students were confused and they didn't know what to do. Well, try not to give up and move on to the next question. And question 11 is also a little bit tricky. Now, the first question here asks us to prove the 10-chord theorem. So they're asking us to prove DFK. So DFK is equal to E. So that is simple. That is simple bookwork there. This proof is given in your note, and you are required to remember it. So as long as you remember to construct your radius, if this is x, then this will be 2x, right? Then this will be 90 minus x, since these are equal. This will be 90 minus x. Since this is a tangent and this is the radius, this whole thing here will be 90. So already I've got this piece to be 90 minus x. This means that this must be x. Okay, so you can see that this angle here is equal to this angle, but nothing is major here. We are given this proof in your notes, so you're required to recall it. And on to the last question. Now, this question here, was extremely difficult, and I suspect most people were probably tired at this point and were unable to think. So the first question, so you're going to read this. I'm not going to read it because this is an exam review. I'm going to simply give you the answers. So the first question asks us to prove that K4 is equal to NML. Okay, so NML, so it is equal to this angle here. Now, if you look at K4, K4 is the angle between a tangent and the chord. So which means this angle will be equal to this angle. The reason, tan chord theorem. But since MN is parallel to KS, then that means we have got corresponding angles. So that means this angle is equal to, so this angle here is equal to this angle. Right. So we have proved that K4 is NML. Obviously, it sounds very short because I'm saying it. In an exam, you have to write it down. So let me use colors so that you can see. So K4 is equal to S1. That is by the 10K theorem. But S1 is equal to NML. That is by corresponding angles. So therefore, these angles are equal, and they are both equal to S1. So that 4 marks in the back. Let's move on to the next one. The next one says prove that KLMN is a cyclic quad. So I want to prove that this is a cyclic quad. Now you can see that this green angle here is equal to this green angle here. So we have got the exterior angle equal to the opposite interior angle. So therefore, that is a cyclic quad. So let's move on. Now, the third part of the question asks us to prove that LKN is similar to KSN. So let me highlight the triangles so that you can see. So they're asking us to prove that LKN, so this triangle here is similar to KSN. Okay, so KSN. Okay, so this triangle here. So what you have to do there is to prove that the three angles are equal in there are equal angles in these two triangles. So where do I start here? I'm going to start with L1. So what you can see here, you can see that L1 is equal to, okay, now I've messed this diagram up and I can't see. Okay, so let me quickly erase what is happening here. So I'm proving similarity in this triangle and this triangle here. Right. So what you can see here, you can see that L1 is equal to M2. Okay, the reason why is that that is a little bit confusing. The reason why is because I've already proved that Kn and L is a cyclic quad. So I have angles in the same segment. So this will be equal to this. But since this is parallel to this, then that means we've got alternative angles. So this will be equal to this. So now you can see that I've got this angle here. Let me use a different color. This angle here is equal to this angle here. Okay, I've proved that. Now, let's move on. Now, if you look at K4, remember the K4 is equal to S1. So this is K4. So that means S2 is 180 minus K4. Right. So let me write it nicely. So S2 is 180 minus K4, right? So I've got this angle equal to 180 minus K4. Now, if I look at the big triangle, this triangle here, I can see that this is K4 and this is the straight line, which means this whole angle inside will be 180 minus K4. Angles in a straight line add up to 180. So I've proved two angles to be equal in these two triangles. The third one is automatically equal because of angles in a triangle. So you can say, therefore, LKN is similar to KSN. I've proved angle, angle, angle. Okay. And now the last two parts are also tricky. This was a very tricky question. Now, now they are telling you that LK is 12 units and 3KN is 4 times SM. Determine the length of KS. Now I've just proven similarity, so I might use the sides in the same proportion there. So I'm going to say, using this similarity I've proved, I can say that LK over KS is equal to KN over SM, and that is equal to LN over KN. Okay, so the examiners are looking for LK, so they are looking for this here. Have I got KS? No, the examiners are looking for KS. Okay, have I got LK? Yes, I've got LK. I'm looking for KS. Now, this here, it's not wise to work with it like this, because you will see that if you rearrange this, then I have Kn over Sm to be equal to 4 over 3. Okay, and you can see here, I've got the ratio Kn over Sm, so that is what I'm going to substitute. So what I've actually got, I've got Lk, which is 12. I've got Lk, which is 12. I'm looking for Ks, but this ratio is equal to 4 over 3. Now, if you solve this simple equation, you're going to find your Ks to be 9 units. And now on to the last question, which I think was even more demanding. Now, they give you the length of NL. Now they give you the length of NL. They say it's 60 units. So NL is 16 units, right? And they give you LS. They tell you that LS is, this here is 13 units. And they tell you that KN is 8 units. And they want you to determine the length of LT. So LT is this little portion here. Now, the first thing that screams here is the proportion theorem, because I'm given this whole length here. So I'm given this whole length here, the one I'm highlighting, right? And they are looking for this little portion. And I am given this portion. I'm not given SM, but I can work my way around it. And I've got parallel lines here. So the only thing that is screaming to me, so this is really a question which requires you to be familiar with your work. So what is screaming at me here is the proportion theorem. So what it states is that Ln over Lt, by the way, T is here, I see I've messed up this drawing, over Lt is equal to Lm over Ls by proportionality. Okay, how did I get that? the reason why I have that because you don't have to prove this. No, you're supposed to know it. It's a theorem. NLM is similar to TLS. Then I use proportionality of size there. Okay, which you're going to get this. You don't have to prove the proportionality, please don't. Okay, so I'm looking for LT. Right, have I been given Ln? Yes, I've been given. It is 16 over LT is equal to my Lm. Now my Lm is missing. Okay, now LS is 13. Okay, how do I get Ln? Right, now you are given that NK is 8 units. Now you have to remember that your examiner said to you that 3 times Kn is equal to 4 Sn. So if you have Kn, then that means you can find Sn. Okay, because Kn over Sn is equal to 4 over 3. So where am I getting that? From this statement here. So you have got Kn, that means you can find Sm. So Sm will be 6 units. So you're going to calculate Sm as 6 units. Right. So now we have got Sm. Now you have got Sm to be 6 units. That means we can find Lm, because Lm will just be Ls plus Sm, which is 19. So 13 plus 6, which is 19. And you solve for Lt. That means your Lt is 10.95. But I suspect most students were tired here, and they were probably very confused because this is a tricky question. It's a difficult question, but I hope you're able to get marks in the previous questions. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.